Everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So today our episode, it's a bit of a marketing and public relations theme. Anika Jackson is our guest. She has her own really successful podcast, and we talk about how marketing and public relations has changed over the years and how business owners can take advantage of making sure your brand is right, your messaging, having a good story to tell, and how public relations kind of fits into that. And it's not what it used to be with just doing, a press release out to the newspapers. There's some great things. She's done some great events. She's been doing what she's been doing since she was a teenager, which I'm not sure how long that is, probably maybe 10 years or so. But she's having fun. She's helping people. She does a lot of good work. So go grab a cigar, cocktail, strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. So Anika, welcome to the program. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy afternoon.
Well, thank you, Walter. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we had a little chat at the green room, so to speak, about your first name. I think it's cool. It's sort of an amalgamation, and it's sort of, you're trying to get people to pronounce that correctly. And I had to ask you how to pronounce it properly. Can you kind of give us a little background on the name before we jump into the whole story?
Absolutely. And I will preface this by saying I have two siblings. My sister is Rani Shaisiri for her first and middle name. My brother is Ivan Prapatanan, and I got Anne Margaret. So I'm half Asian and half European blend. And so growing up, I always felt like I want some exotic name. And so I renamed myself from Anne Margaret when I was in middle school. It was junior high back then. Now I guess they call it middle school. And renamed myself to Anika. But to Americanize it, people would often call me Anika. So I just stuck with Anika to make it easy for the transition from Anne Margaret to Anika. But it really is Anika or Anika. So those are my preferred pronunciations. And and it goes with all the countries. So on the Asian side, I'm Thai and Laos, and Anika is a name there. But also on the other side, I'm Dutch, Danish, German, English, and Scottish. And it's also very much a Scandinavian name.
Wow. So. That's a hell of a mix
of a lot of things. And then my daughter is you add in a couple more for her. She also has Italian and Irish. So yeah.
That's cool. So are you able to celebrate all those ethnicities with food and in culture and language, or because the food's got to be wild?
Funny enough, growing up, my family always had dinner parties. And I think this is a really great segue into why I love doing what I do in my day job. We'd always bring people together to the family house, and we'd have a different theme with the music and the food. So I learned very early, not really the cuisines from those countries necessarily. I love Thai. I love making Thai food, but I learned how to make Greek food. I learned how to make Moroccan food. My dad had spent some time in Morocco when his dad was in the military overseas. Just a lot of different countries, Italian, and making everything from scratch and making your own sauces and your own pasta and all of that stuff. So I've always had a love and appreciation for multiple cultures and cuisines, and carried that into my life, bringing people together around ideas, around culture, around food, and then, whether it was in my personal life or my professional life.
That's a cool story, like being able to have a themed party with a group of people, get everybody to participate, I would imagine too. That makes it, because everybody's not just standing around and kibitzing about this and that. They actually give them a job and make them go to work on making a pasta and rolling things and putting stuff together. That's cool. And then when you tie the music together, that really brings it together and everybody's having a good time. I love it. So, and that sort of informs so let's talk a little bit, like that kind of talks about how your brain was formed and how you started thinking about people. So talk about like how you got to be where you are in this sort of entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So my family on one side were entrepreneurs, and the other side, teachers and social workers. So growing up, I never knew which side of my brain I wanted to use. I loved both of those things. So when I went to university, I was like, do I want to major in business or do I want to major in social work? So I ended up getting a degree in public administration. But before that, when I was in high school, I loved music. And again, I loved getting people together and going to things where everybody was happy and coming together around a core concept, whether it was the music or whether it was around art or whatever it was. So when I was a junior in high school, and this is in Kansas, mind you, Kansas. Yeah, I grew up in Lawrence, Kansas. I was going to Kansas City every weekend to go dancing and listen to music and get some bigger city culture, right? And friends said, hey, some DJs want you to start promoting for them and for their events, and you get to get in free to the events. So that was my first foray into actually getting paid to do marketing. And from there, I started doing my own events, promotions, a lot of times pairing charities with them. So again, kind of looking at like, how do I bring people together around something fun where they're paying to be here, but there's also a social good component. Then I moved to Chicago, worked for a marketing firm and worked in the club world, moved to LA. I've lived in a lot of different cities, moved to LA, started working in magazine publishing and continue to hone those skills and really learned how to message what our advertisers for advertising in the magazine wanted to say to the consumers that were reading the magazine. So I put together different events that were consumer driven, but promoted our advertiser partners and our magazine. And I learned how to do subscription, circulation, all the different sides of the business. Then I launched official Xbox magazine as a launch marketing manager when Xbox first came out. And I launched a dance music magazine for the same company. And so that, again, I got to cut my teeth and kind of learn, what are consumers looking for? What are brands looking for? How do you pair those two together to create an experience that will benefit both of them? Whether it was, and this is in the days of home video, which was a big advertising segment for our magazines. So we'd look at, okay, the new X-Men movies coming out on home video, DVD now. So what can we do? So we put together promotions where the magazine editors would judge. We'd have like an in-person event, like in Los Angeles. The editors would judge readers of the magazine who would come up with their own superhero characters. And we picked the finalists. And then we had Stan Lee come judge the finals.
Wow.
So it was a really cool experience for everybody because the readers of the magazine got to interact with a hero of theirs,
Sure.
Whether it was Stan Lee or, I mean, they looked at the editors of the magazine as heroes too, because they were getting to write about video games for a living, right?
Well, they're living their passion. They got to participate in something that they really love to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so from there, I just kept on going. I had multiple of my own businesses, whether it was marketing and PR businesses. I had a social club and a retail store in Houston, Texas. I've had real estate investment businesses. I've done a lot of different things. So I also just kind of always had that brain where I wanted to get out and meet people and be social and also like have fun and maybe make some money doing it, right?
Yeah. That's to me, the element of having fun, like doing something you enjoy, right? Which should make having fun easier, but it's not always the case. Like when I started this podcast, it was like I wanted to meet people that to me were interesting, where I could learn something and hopefully be able to put some stuff out there that people would find interesting and helpful to their business. But the underlying thread for all of that was for Walter to have some fun in the process, right? Because I mean, I've got over 100 episodes that have dropped, got like 100 and another 25 that are, been recorded. I would say 99% of them have been fun, entertaining for me. And we always get something that comes out of them that, people enjoy and people, comment on that was interesting or they learned something. So, and it's not always about what you think, right? I would imagine in your travels, like you've experienced different things, but sometimes what people really enjoy is not exactly what you thought they might, and what resonates with them. Is that accurate?
Very accurate. And that's why I love podcasting as well. I get to meet amazing people I would never have met if it weren't for this platform. And I get to keep those relationships, right? These are really like you and I now have a relationship. I can think about, okay, I know somebody who should work with you or vice versa. Or we can we want to do some other things together. Like I want to have you on my podcast. We can go from there. But it's fascinating to me when you think about life, like the reason I really cultivate these connections from different places I've lived, but it's part of my brand too. So I know this is something we want to talk about a little bit. So I moved from Kansas City to Chicago to LA to San Francisco to LA to Houston. And now I'm back in Los Angeles for the third and knock on wood, final time. But in each of those, I did slightly different things for my work, but I still have those connections, right? I need to call on somebody, or if I know somebody who needs something in a certain industry, it makes it easier for me to make those connections. It also makes it easier for people to remember me. Oh, I didn't have a PR agency when I lived in Houston. There were a lot of great publicists and marketers there. I did other endeavors and just used my PR and marketing skills that I'd already built for my businesses. But people remembered that. So I still get calls, clients and friends who want to be clients.
But it's weird how if you've actually helped people and you've been sort of, ingrained in what they do, you leave the city or you leave that market. I mean, I got calls for like a decade after I left I had a sign business, and I had people that would call me and say, hey, I need a thing for my sign for my building. I'm like, okay, I haven't done that for like 9 years. And they're like, yeah, but you know what I should do. So it was almost like they still wanted an opinion and they wanted direction. And you become, especially for you become a resource for people of making connections and connecting dots. And that's why this podcast is cool, because later this month, there's a group of us that are going to get together down in Ohio. And there's going to be like 7 or 8 of us that have been on the podcast or are connected somehow. And we're just going to get together for cigars and cocktails and dinner and, see what we can do to help each other. It's not formal, but I can start to see doing stuff like that. And that might be something that we could talk about at some point in the future. Like, how do I organize those kind of events, right? And what would be the right way to do it? So you're like living your dream. From what you started out as a teenager doing. You're a teenager in, middle school? You're a teenager.
Well, middle school, high school, definitely when I started actually promoting for people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had to drive to Kansas City. That's right. But Lawrence is a college town, isn't it?
It is a college town.
So there wasn't like enough music. I went to University of Michigan, and Ann Arbor was like a great place for music.
No, there was music, but, my mom got remarried right before I started high school, and we moved to the country. At that point, I was like in between Lawrence and Topeka, Kansas, so there wasn't a lot going on.
Okay, I get it. You're in Kansas.
So I would go back to Lawrence, and I actually did promote events in Lawrence, but Kansas City was really the big market.
Cool. All right, let's talk a little bit about what you've done recently in marketing and doing full capacity and your brand amplified. Let's kind of talk a little bit about storytelling, because we talked a little bit about this in before we started recording. Business owners, entrepreneurs, and I'm going to include myself in this, we do an awful job of being able to tell our own story in a way that reaches the people that we really can help and that we're really passionate about. I mean, to me, that's the driver. I want to help people. Sure, I want to get paid, that of course, but if I'm not helping somebody, then I shouldn't be paid. But why is it such a struggle? I mean, just curious. I'm sure you've talked to thousands of people about this. Why is it so hard for us to tell our own story?
There are definitely a few reasons. One thing that I will see when people come, small businesses and entrepreneurs say they're ready for PR. A lot of times I have to take a step back and say, you're not ready for PR yet, but you need to go back to your brand, because a lot of people start their company. You start your company because you're like, oh, this is a need, something I see that I want, and it's not being offered. So let me start this company. Or there are some other companies that do similar stuff or sell similar widgets, but they're not exactly what I see the need for in the market, right? So you start there and you think it's all about your product and your brand. And what we've seen over the last few years particularly is that brand really it's about your customer persona. What are you offering to the world? What are you solving for people? And that doesn't need to be coached in a negative way or a sky is falling. This is what, you need to buy this now. It can be coached very positively, how you're adding value and bringing something new. But a lot of times people don't take the time to necessarily take these steps of thinking through the questions, looking at your competitive analysis, like really doing a deep dive. What are they doing on social? What are they doing on their website? What do their backlinks look like? Where are they getting press? How are they messaging, right? Thinking about your customer personas. How many people are you selling to? If you're a tech startup, you might have an audience of consumers who are going to buy the product, businesses who might buy a different part of your product, investors, right? Or if you're a nonprofit, sponsors for what you're doing and the good you're putting out, but you have to think about each of those messages a little bit differently and really hone in on those audiences. So I think people don't necessarily take the time to do that and then create what their messages are. And part of the messaging that we see now, people really want that authenticity. I think that they've always wanted it, but a lot of times people said, oh yeah, I'll just buy the brand. But now people are more in tune with buying the person. They want to know who you are, why they should buy from you. Do you have the same values? Do you look at the world the same way? That might be a differentiator for me in why I partner or buy your product versus somebody else's. And when I recently merged with Full Capacity Marketing, I'm bringing in the PR side and some of the stuff. And then Full Capacity has primarily worked in workforce development and education, doing digital advertising, digital marketing, branding, website development, SEO, all of that stuff. So it's been a really awesome marriage of kind of disparate, like all of the things we do need to be integrated, marketing solutions. Industries need to be integrated because I work mostly with consumers and small businesses and nonprofits, but we can use the same techniques. And what was really interesting is my CEO has been in business 21 years for this business. She's had other businesses before this. She's never done PR because she didn't feel that her story was important. Now, she didn't need to do PR to stay in business 21 years, get the customers and build up the company to the success level she has, or win 75 global marketing awards. But when I hear her story tells me why she started the company, right? There's that connection. And she's like, oh, my story is not important. Oh, no, it is. It's inspiration for me. And that's what people want to see. When you have a product or service, why do I want to buy into you? Why do I want to work with you? How are you helping me gain inspiration or aspiration? Another example on the opposite side is I was working with a startup company that had a cleaning product. It's called PP Wipe. It's on the market right now, I believe. And it was like basically a stick with a cleaning wand so that if you're in, and it was because it was a husband and wife, doctor and nurse, 3 little girls. The mom went out and was complaining that, the toilets in the mall were dirty. And she has 3 little girls. She's trying to help them go potty. And if you have kids, you know, it's like if they say it, you have to do it right away.
Right. Yeah. There's not a lot of negotiating in that moment.
So she's like, I don't have a good cleaning product because even if you use like a wet wipe or something, you still have to use your hand to clean off the surface. And so, but they wanted it to be very, they didn't want to tell their story. And they also wanted it to only be about one function, if you will. And I think there are lots of functions like airports, college baskets now, because especially post-COVID or in COVID, people are starting to go, okay, what cleaning supplies and what do we need to put in these baskets and give to people? How do we make sure surfaces are clean?
Restaurants, you could put it in a restaurant because look at some of the tables they forget to clean and it's, because they're so short-staffed.
There's so many use cases, but they were very particular about wanting, I wish them all the success, but they also didn't want to share their story of why they started it. And that story is what would get me to buy, right?
Yep.
That's the story that would get me to look at a small business as opposed to Clorox or any of the big brands that I can just go to the supermarket and pull off the shelf right now.
That's a great point. And when I think about, like I post on LinkedIn mostly because I believe that's where my audience hangs out, but I'm told that they hang out everywhere. But when I share something personal about what happened to me or something that I like, right? I had a birthday in March and my daughter planned this dinner and a concert and she planned it like 8 months in advance, secured tickets. I mean, she did this whole thing, which is all great and amazing, but it's because of band that I introduced her to when she was sitting in the little car seat in the back of my car as we're driving around town. And it's music that she's put on her playlist and that she's made her roommates listen to for the last couple of years when she's in college. I didn't know anything about this. And when I told this story on LinkedIn, it's one of the biggest engagement posts that I've ever had. And it had nothing to do with what I do other than that I raised a good human being or I helped raise a good human being. We had a connection on band and, most people hadn't heard of the band, but there was a few that had, and they're all, freaks about the same band. So you make a great point that, when we're authentic and we share what we're really trying to do and why we're trying to do it and what's important, and you throw in a little bit of personal stuff every once in a while, it really makes a difference. And drilling in to the right people, if you call it a persona or an ideal client profile, whatever that is, really getting specific about how you talk to that person is what you're talking about about, and then being able to promote that. So I guess what I wanted to really ask about, and maybe I'm just dumb, but what goes into public relations? Because I had somebody that would write press releases for me years ago about a project that we finished, and it got published in the local papers and in the business journals. And then I would have people call me. It's like, how come you're not talking about my project, in these press releases, right? So besides that, what goes into help somebody understand what really goes into public relations program or campaign?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's so much more now. Press releases still have their time and their place, but they're not the one thing I would rely on. There's a few different ways to slice and dice this, but PR really lives in the earned media space. So we are pitching you to a podcast or to a magazine, online blog, radio show, TV, whatever it is, right? We're pitching you as an expert, or maybe we're taking an article you've written and pitching it as an op-ed or a piece that this magazine would be interested in. So it's earned media, and there's two kinds of things. There's outbound, which is when we pitch the journalists. So we look up, okay, this is your product, here's your demographic, here's your story, let's overlay these, and let me see what are the best publications right now for you to be in. Who's talking about this? There's so many techniques that we use to get into this. And then we use databases and our relationships with journalists to start pitching them directly and say, hey, I see that you write about XYZ. I'd like to lift up so-and-so as an expert. So that's outbound press or media. Then inbound, there are a lot of ways that journalists now tell us what they need. So whether it's help a reporter out, which I heard today is shifting to a new platform under Cision, or Source Bottle or Quoted, or any number of a lot of journalists have Substacks that say they publish that say, here are the articles that I'm writing right now that I need experts to interview. And so those are requests that come from the journalists into our email so that we can see, okay, which one of these 100 opportunities matches my client. And then we'll pitch, and that pitch might be, we're sending in answers to questions. Or it might be we're sending in your bio and saying why you'd be a great expert for this article. There's also a lot of Facebook groups now where journalists and PR professionals get together and do the same kind of thing where one side is saying, hey, I need this. And the other side is saying, okay, I have an expert for that. And then there's newsjacking. So if there's something that's top of mind, something that's happening that's in the news cycle right now, and you have the perfect client or you are the perfect expert for that topic, reaching out to those journalists and offering yourself up as the next resource. I saw you just covered XYZ. I know that this is top of mind, whether it's state, national, whatever, you can say legislator or this and that, or, some of the things that we see requests for right now all the time. Safety is one. Education is huge, and the changing face of education, obviously the economy, real estate, because that's been going up and down a lot. There's always a need for experts in some of these categories. Finance, entrepreneurship. So that's kind of the process of how we match. And so it can be a short process if the person's already done the work. They know their brand, they know who they are, they know how to speak, they know how to tell their story. It cuts down the time a lot. For instance, we had a client, Garden Girls of Houston, Texas. Now there are other Garden Girls in other states and other cities, but particularly one of the founders wanted to get some press. Immediately we're able to get her into Martha Stewart Living, Real Homes and Gardens, Real Simple, Washington Post, as a quoted expert, because that was the right time. And she could talk about a lot of different topics that had to do with interior design, gardening, eco landscaping, on and on and on, or like what gardens to plant, what flowers to plant at different times. And so we were able to get a lot of that for her. And now, because of the way that PR works, it really is part of an integrated marketing strategy. We could then map to her website what traffic came from those articles.
Oh, so you can actually show an ROI, if you will.
Which
Interesting.
what used to be able to happen. And her partner said, we just got 30 requests on our website for information about blah, blah, blah service. And she said, yep, that's from this article that just got published.
Wow.
Now we're able to actually make PR part of, even though a lot of it is brand awareness, it's not sales, but it definitely ties into the sales cycle more now than ever.
It's top of the funnel, even sometimes before the funnel, but it can be top of the funnel. I mean, you just described the whole cycle of marketing and how marketing needs to be able to play nice with the sales department.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you can't separate, no more silos. Everything has to work together. And
No.
that's where then you take an article, you put it on your website. So you have that really great backlink. You put it in your social media. If it was really good and if it speaks to exactly what you want to offer to your ideal client, then you turn it into an advertising campaign, right? So you can use one piece of media across everything in the cycle and help it can be that first touch in the sales cycle.
So we have a lot of business owners, entrepreneurial folks that listen to the podcast, and even salespeople that are kind of running their own business within a sales organization. How do they know who the right PR person would be? I mean, it should be integrated into their marketing, but if they want to try to get their name out there and they want to, make people more aware of them, how do they know the right people to work with? What should they be looking for?
They should look for some case studies and success, or they should make sure that it's somebody. A lot of PR people are niched down, so they'll focus on specific verticals, so that you want to make sure that matches up. And you kind of want to see what that person's been able to do in your field, right? So I work a lot with, entrepreneurs, and that has run a huge gamut. So I'm industry agnostic in a sense, but I work a lot with women entrepreneurs, small businesses, and tech startups, right? And then also nonprofits. And then on the other side, we have workforce development and education. So we have all of these different things that different people on my team are experts in. If I'm not the right person for somebody, I probably have somebody who is. Some people don't want to work with an agency, or they might not have the budget. The reason why my prices are a little higher as an agency are because of the tools and resources that I've invested in. I pay a lot of money to use these tools that then help me do the data analysis that's going to get me, I always want to do a lot of analysis, psychographic, demographic, all of that, as I'm starting to create your messaging and work with you on your messaging.
Yeah, because
everybody's going to do that though, right?
No, you're not. But if you're starting to think about it, you need to start to work your way through that, and being clear about who you're trying to reach, what you need to say to them. Again, goes back to what we started talking about with, we need to be able to tell our own story, and we need to believe that that story is important and integrate that into, why we're doing what we're doing. And I think having outside counsel, if you will, right, from a marketing perspective or public relations or whatever aspect of marketing, we need that, because it's hard to look at that and figure it out for ourselves sometimes. We really need that. It's right there in front of you and you're not seeing it, right? Sometimes we just need that little, somebody to turn the light on and say, oh, look, it's right there. I've had little epiphanies from time to time. It's like, wow, that's so obvious. I didn't see it. It's easy when you have somebody point it out. So I think there's value there. And it's probably gotten easier than what it was, because before you had print, right? There wasn't a digital aspect of what public relations was. You had some events that you could do, but you really needed to get into those few print articles. Now it's much more, you can really niche down pretty quickly and pretty easily if you know where to go, and you have the tools, like you said, you've invested in to dive into that.
Yeah. And a strategy is going to be different for each person, right? So I might have somebody come to me. I don't do crisis PR, but maybe they've had some unfavorable things written about them. So for them, what I'm going to want to do is get as many things written about them as possible. Earned media, not things we're not paying for placements. We're not paying for sponsored posts, but earned media articles in a variety of publications that will flood Google and increase the positive SEO, right? Somebody else might say, like, I just signed a client called Flip Lock. They do safety locks that kids in schools, or, as well as adults or people in their homes, can use, that will create a safe mechanism in case there's an intruder coming into the school, or somebody breaks into your apartment. You have this lock on your bedroom, or in your schoolroom, and it can withstand more pressure than other locks. There's just a variety of things. And the woman, she and her husband started this. They have patents. They have 6 kids. It's a passion for her.
Yeah.
She has a publicist in Houston that she's keeping, because that's a specific kind of market and you need somebody on the ground there as well. But then she's hired me to do national. And so I'm working with her Houston publicist, but I'm going to be reaching out to a lot of other publications and broadcast and all these other platforms that need to hear her message.
That could be a great add-on product for a lot of companies. And unfortunately, that's a needed thing, especially in the education K through 12 market. Even at upper, in college, university level, that's become a problem. And I think it speaks to your point before. You'd rather deal with somebody that, like, wow, they did this because they really care and they have a really great story rather than go deal with some corporate entity that doesn't have a soul. Not that all corporations don't have a soul, but you know what I mean. To me, it's more meaningful to reach into that. I love shopping local. I buy cigars. I do buy some online, but I like going to the brick and mortar stores and supporting them.
It turns into an experience. You're not just
Yeah.
a local entrepreneur, but you get that social connection. You might meet some new people.
My wife and I were going out to dinner to take some friends out for dinner on Saturday, and I got to make a quick stop here. And I ran in and to a cigar shop to pick up a box of cigars. And the lady that, sort of manages the store, I hadn't seen in a while. And there were two patrons in there that I hadn't seen in a while. And I come back out. She's like, well, you said you were going to run in and out. And I'm like, yeah, sorry. I ran into like 3 people that I hadn't seen in a while. And that's what I love about cigars. It's a social thing. You can go any city in the world and walk into a cigar shop and you have something in common with every man and woman in the place because, like, what are you smoking, right? And that starts a conversation that could last hours. They have for me. So I think cigars would be a great way for me. And it's something that I've really thought about. I want to work with entrepreneurs that have small sales teams that, are struggling to put the right accountability and systems in place. But I want to work with the people that are running those that have some interests that I have, right? So I can have a little fun and go have a bourbon with somebody and a cigar with somebody. It really makes it fun, right? You got to perform. You still got to do your job, but having fun is a big part of it. So you've managed to do that since you were a teenager, having fun, doing something you want, helping people. I love it. So I got a question for you. Past or present, do you have a relationship with cigars?
I have 3, and I'll make them quick, cigar stories. One is Kansas City, Missouri, Harry's Cigar Bar and Lounge. That might not be quite the right name. It might not even be there anymore. But when I was in my early 20s, and we could smoke cigars in the restaurant. I loved having a really nice glass of red wine and smoking a cigar. And that was my first introduction to cigars. And then another great memory with cigars is being on a French island and being in the water and smoking a cigar in the ocean.
Wow, that's something I haven't done.
That's cool. Pretty magical. And then the third one is I have a cigar right here, actually, from a nonprofit event that I just helped with for Richstone Family Center in Los Angeles. We had a Havana Nights gala, and we had a Cuban cigar roller rolling cigars at the end of the night for the after party. And I tell you what, everybody stayed for the after party. We were like turning the lights on going, okay, you guys all got to go home because really great salsa and Havana music playing. They could smoke cigars. It was at a Porsche dealership that had closed down the shop for us. It was pretty amazing. But so I haven't smoked it yet, but I do have a couple cigars.
Nice. Nice. I love having an event, whether it be a wedding or just a corporate kind of event or non-for-profit where they do that. And sometimes you got to go outside to enjoy the cigar. They usually make accommodations for it, but those are 3 great stories, Anika. I love it. Now you're giving me inspiration. I got to go back to down in the Caribbean someplace and have a cigar while I'm standing in the ocean. All right, cool. Let's leave it there. I'm going to have all of your social media and your websites in the show notes, but I always like to ask, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you if they're interested in, learning a little bit more about how they could enhance their brand with some public relations?
Awesome. Well, you can reach out to me on all socials. I'm Amplify with Anika, or Anika, Anika, all the pronunciations, just Anika. And then Full Capacity Marketing as well. You can go to our website, fullcapacitymarketing.com, contact us. We are a very boutique agency. The CEO and I handle all of the calls that come in personally to make sure that we're the right fit. And like you said, you want to work with people who also enjoy the things that you like.
And that you can help, right? You care about being able to help somebody.
Can we work together? If not, let us let us recommend some other people whom you might want to work with.
And I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is align somebody with who's a better fit when it's not us, because it helps us, it helps person looking for the help, and then it helps somebody else along the way, and then all the other ancillary people that get helped along the way. So that's great. I love the story. It's a great episode, and I want to talk to you about being on your podcast. I'm looking forward to that. So
I love that.
Awesome. So thank you very much.